There are stories that begin with love. This one begins with a betrayal, and a promise never meant to be broken. He was 27, the kind of man who thought he had made peace with the unfairness of life. A horseback riding injury when he was 16 left him infertile. That knowledge had followed him like a silent echo in every serious relationship, every medical form, every passing thought of legacy. But he had found a woman who said that didn't matter. She loved him, not his DNA. She said they could build a life together, just the two of them. Then, one night she got drunk and slept with someone else. A stranger. She came home with his child inside her. The baby wasn't his. Couldn't be. Would never be. But she kept the baby. And he, through some unfathomable twist of loyalty or delusion or love that hadn't entirely died, stayed. They almost divorced that year. Therapy kept them together. Week by week they learned to talk again. But trust didn't heal the way bruises did. It lingered. It stiffened into silence during arguments. It turned warm memories into ice on bad nights. Still, he tried. He told her he could stay if she understood one thing: he would not be that child's father. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. Not ever. She agreed. Desperation can sound like understanding when you're afraid to be alone. For 5 years, he played the role of uncle, not dad. He bought the boy toys, shared laughs over video games, and taught him to skip stones. But he kept his distance where it mattered. The child called him uncle, and that was fine. The child knew there was a missing piece. Someone out there who gave him life but left no name. That man was gone. And so, the boy filled that void with the only male presence he had ever known, the man who slept down the hallway, who never tucked him in, never corrected his homework, never said "I'm proud of you," but was always there. 5 years. That arrangement, though far from perfect, worked. No tears, no fights, no questions. Until now. The woman, the wife still, had changed the terms. Quietly but deliberately. She began suggesting the boy call him dad. At first in passing. Then, in front of the child. "Wouldn't it be nice if we were really a family?" she'd say. "He sees you as his dad anyway." The boy, confused, asked one evening, "Should I stop calling you uncle now?" It hit the man like a thunderclap through a hollow chest. Because what was he supposed to say? That love is not enough. That bloodlines matter when lawyers come calling. That he had promised only to endure, not to belong. The boy blinked up at him with the kind of eyes that didn't know how to lie. And that was the moment he knew whatever peace they had made was built on borrowed time. A storm was coming. And this time no therapist could save them from what the truth demanded. Because somewhere between obligation and survival, he had become the only father that boy would ever remember. And now the woman he once loved wanted that memory written in ink. In court papers. In future courtrooms. In inheritance law and guardianship forms. She wanted to seal him to a child he never asked for, through a bond forged not in trust, but guilt. Guilt, like love, makes for a poor foundation. So he stood at the edge of a question few men are ever brave, or unlucky enough to face. If you stay but never belong, are you cruel? And if you leave but never explain, are you a coward? He never wanted to be a father. But life had a way of naming you anyway. Before the child, there had been another version of them. One where Sunday morning smelled of coffee and quiet contentment. Where the only arguments were about what to stream after dinner or which beach to visit when their vacation days aligned. They were young, and though the world had weathered them both in small ways, they clung to the hope that love, if tended to gently, would be enough. She was 21 when they met. She had that soft, sunlit charm that made men forget to finish their sentences. He was 22, just out of college, with hands that still trembled a little when he talked about love, as if the very word might escape him if he didn't hold on tightly enough. He told her on their third date that he couldn't have children. Most men would have hidden it until the 3rd year. He brought it up with the same steady awkwardness he applied to everything that mattered. And she smiled, reached across the table, and said, "Then we'll build something else." He believed her. And for a while she believed herself too. They moved in together in a small apartment with creaky floors and one window that always got stuck in the summer. But they were happy. Or at least they believed they were doing better than most. They shared Spotify playlists, texted inside jokes, and learned each other's silences. There was no roadmap, but they weren't lost. Not yet. The wedding came 2 years later, small and intimate. Her father toasted to a man whose proven love is more than legacy, and his mother cried during the vows. They said things like always, and only, and forever without knowing how heavy those words can become. And then came the night that would become the border between before and after. She had gone out with friends. He hadn't minded. He trusted her, even if he still checked the clock every now and then. It was 2:17 a.m. when she stumbled in, mascara smudged and eyes wide with a kind of hollow he didn't recognize. The truth unraveled slowly, clumsily. There had been a man. She didn't know his name. Didn't get his number. It was a one-night mistake, she swore, one that meant nothing. Except it did, because a month later she told him she was pregnant. They sat in silence for 24 minutes after that. He remembered the exact number, because he counted the seconds to keep from breaking apart. "I can't be the father," he said. "You know that." "I know," she whispered. "But I'm going to keep it." He almost left that night. He packed a bag. He walked to the door. And then, for reasons that still don't make sense in the clear light of retrospection, he came back. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the belief that one betrayal, however sharp, didn't have to be the end. They went to couples therapy. At first, just to talk without screaming. Then to plan what life would look like with a child that was biologically hers and someone else's. They set rules. Boundaries. He wouldn't be listed on the birth certificate. He would not adopt the child. He would support her emotionally, and eventually financially, but never in the role of father. She agreed, grudgingly maybe, but she agreed. The child came into the world on a cold March afternoon. He was small and loud and impossibly fragile. The man held him once. Just once. Long enough to say, "You didn't ask for this. I know that." And then he handed him back to the nurse and stepped aside. From then on, he became the figure in the periphery. Present, but never central. He made bottles in the middle of the night. He bought dinosaur pajamas and learned to build Lego castles. He laughed when the boy laughed. But when the boy cried, he left that to her. When the boy asked questions about where he came from, she answered. He stayed just outside the frame. To the world, they were a family. But within their home, there were lines drawn in sand. The boy called him uncle, and the man didn't correct him. He paid for school supplies, sat quietly through kindergarten plays, and nodded politely when other parents referred to him as dad. He never corrected them either. But the word didn't belong to him. Not really. It was a jacket that didn't quite fit, and he refused to wear it. Years passed. The routines hardened into rituals, and if there was a kind of grief beneath it all, it was buried beneath errands and bedtime stories and tax season. Until she broke the pact. She began to leave adoption brochures around the house. Brought it up casually over breakfast. It would mean the world to him, you know. She framed it as a gesture of love, of commitment, of closure. But for him it was something else. A rewriting of the deal. A demand, wrapped in sentiment. And slowly, painfully, the distance that had once been carefully negotiated began to crack. Because the truth, as hard as it was, remained this: he never wanted to be a father. Not like this, not under these terms. And she had once said that was okay. But now she wanted more. And the question was no longer whether he could love this child. It was whether he could still live with himself if he said no. It started with small things, as most quiet implosions do. The toothbrush moved next to his. The boy's drawings started appearing on his nightstand. A Father's Day card appeared in June. Not one the boy had made, but one his wife had clearly helped him buy. Inside, a scrawled crayon note. "Thank you for always being there, Dad." He stared at it for nearly an hour, unsure whether to feel guilt or anger. He didn't throw it away. But he didn't keep it, either. For 5 years he had honored their agreement. He didn't parent. He supported. He didn't discipline. He distracted. He didn't step in. He stood by. And the boy, innocent in all of this, had accepted it. There had been peace in that understanding. But his wife, she had started redrawing the lines. It wasn't just the card. It was the way she'd started introducing him. "This is my husband, the father of our son." When he gently corrected her in private, she brushed it off. "It's easier," she said. "People don't understand complicated." He understood complicated. He'd been living in it. And then came the ultimatum. It wasn't screamed or shouted. She didn't cry or beg. She simply stood in the kitchen one night, drying dishes, and said, "I want you to adopt him. Officially. I want this to be real." He put down the glass he was holding, carefully, as if even the sound of it meeting the counter might trigger something irreversible. "We talked about this," he said. "You promised me." I changed my mind. It wasn't just your decision. She looked at him with eyes that once held apology, but now only held resolve. He needs a father. A real one. Not someone who's half in and half out. He wanted to say he was all in the only way he could be. He wanted to remind her of what she did. Of the night she took everything from him, and gave him something he never asked to carry. Instead, he said nothing. Because he knew what would come next. And it did. She began coaching the boy. Not obviously. Not cruelly. But deliberately. One evening, while reading on the porch, the boy came to him and asked, "Do you like when I call you uncle?" The question was so gentle it hurt. "I like whatever makes you feel happy," the man said. "My mom says you're like a real dad now. That maybe I should call you dad soon. Would that make you happy?" He smiled a smile that never reached his eyes. "I think what makes me happy is you feeling safe." It was a politician's answer. Empty, evasive. And the boy accepted it with the fragile grace only children possess, the kind that hides bruises even before they form. That night, he confronted her. "I told you not to do this. He's getting older," she snapped. "He's asking questions. He deserves to have a real family. We are a real family, just not the one you're pretending we are." She stepped closer, the air between them thick with 5 years of held breath. "Then what are we? What are you?" "I'm a man who stayed when he could have left. I'm a man who helps with homework, who takes him to the park, who pretends to like carrot sticks so he'll eat them. I'm the one who listens when you cry in the shower, and the one who never made this about me." She looked at him, jaw clenched, trembling. "And yet," she whispered, "you still won't love him enough to call him yours." That was the cut he wasn't prepared for. Because she was right, in part. He didn't love the boy like a father loves a son. He cared, yes. He respected. He even admired. But love? That kind of love? The kind that makes you die a little for someone, makes you sign papers and share names and stay up at night worrying about tuition and first heartbreaks? No. That love never came. He thought it might. He hoped it would. But hope is not a strategy, and 5 years had proven that blood may not define fatherhood. But neither does proximity. She left the room in tears, and for the first time in years he didn't follow her. Later that week he found adoption forms on his desk, neatly printed, half-filled. Paper clipped to an envelope titled, "When you're ready." He sat there for over an hour, staring at the black ink that threatened to define the rest of his life. Name of adopting parent. Address, relationship to child, all so clean, so clinical, so dishonest. He closed the file and slid it into the bottom drawer. Then he locked it. That night he sat across the boy at dinner. The child was 7 now. Bright, curious, wonderfully kind. He'd grown into a boy who liked astronomy and hated broccoli, who asked about the stars and built elaborate contraptions out of cardboard. And still, he called him uncle. And that, more than anything, was what tore him apart. Because he knew the child wouldn't be 7 forever. Someday soon he would ask why his last name was different, why school forms always had that blank space next to father, why uncle signed field trip slips while other dads waited at the gate. And he would have to answer. Or leave before he ever had to. The problem wasn't that he didn't care. It was that he cared too much to pretend. And that made everything harder. Because when a man builds a life on the promise of not becoming something, and the world demands he become it anyway, what does he owe? To the child? To the woman? To himself? No court could answer that. But soon he would have to. The file in the drawer stayed locked. But something in the air between them had been released, like a gas leak no one could quite smell but everyone could feel. It changed the way she moved through the house. Quieter, tenser. It changed the way he kissed her goodbye, if he kissed her at all. And it changed the way the boy watched them, more carefully now, as if trying to solve a riddle where none of the clues quite fit. 3 weeks after the forms appeared, she brought up the adoption again, this time at dinner with the boy sitting between them. Her voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. "Do you know what adoption is?" she asked, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate. The boy shook his head. "It's when someone becomes your parent, even if they didn't bring you into the world." The man put his fork down slowly. The child looked at her, then at him. "Like if a kid doesn't have a mom or dad?" "Sort of," she said, "but sometimes it's about choosing. About making it official." And then, still smiling, she turned to her husband. "Right, honey?" He stared at her like she had just thrown gasoline across the table and dared him to light a match. "Now's not the time," he said, his voice low, barely masking the fury beneath. "But why not?" she replied sweetly. "He's right here. He should hear it from you." The boy watched, uncertain. His hand hovered near his glass of milk, as if frozen between instinct and confusion. The man took a breath. Then another. Then he stood, took his plate to the sink, and left the room without another word. That night, he slept on the couch. The boy came to him around midnight, small feet padding across the hardwood floor, dragging a blanket behind him. "Are you mad at Mom?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No," the man lied. "Are you mad at me?" The question hit him like a body blow. "No," he said again, this time truthfully. "Never you." "Then why are things weird?" He sat up, pulled the blanket over both of them. "Sometimes grown-ups get confused. We try to do what's right, but we don't always know what that is." The boy didn't respond. He just leaned against him, head resting on his arm. "Uncle?" he said, after a long silence. "Yeah, I don't care what anyone says. I still like calling you uncle." That moment should have been enough to settle things. It should have returned the boundary, preserved the fragile order they had lived with for years. But it didn't. The next week, she scheduled a meeting with a family lawyer. Didn't ask. Just told him the night before. "It's just a conversation," she said. "No pressure. But we should understand our options." He didn't go. She came home furious. Called him coward. Said he was trying to run from the consequences of his own choices. "Choices?" he asked. "You mean staying with you after you got pregnant with another man's child?" Her slap didn't land physically, but the silence that followed did more damage than a hand ever could. That night, he packed a small bag. Not all of it. Just enough. A toothbrush. A week's worth of shirts. The watch his father had given him. The one thing she hadn't touched. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, he called his brother and asked if the guest room was still available. Just in case. Meanwhile, the boy began to withdraw. He no longer bounded into rooms with stories of his day. He no longer left drawings on the man's desk. He stopped calling him anything at all. It was as if the confusion had seeped into him and soured his joy. One night, the man found him sitting alone in the laundry room, legs tucked against his chest. "What's going on, kiddo?" he asked, kneeling beside him. The boy looked up. "If I call you Dad, will you stay?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the truth was cruel, he hadn't decided to stay. Not yet. And that uncertainty, that looming maybe, was already hurting someone who had never asked for any of this. He went back to therapy. Not couples. Just him. "I feel like I'm playing a role in a play I didn't audition for," he told the therapist. "And now the director wants me to improvise the second act." She nodded slowly, jotting something down. "And what happens if you refuse the role?" she asked. He looked at the ceiling, as if the answer might be up there, hiding in the cracks of the plaster. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." The lawyer his wife had seen send him a letter. Not a demand. Not yet. But a formal invitation to discuss family structure options. It sat unopened for 3 days on the kitchen counter. On the 4th, she moved it to his pillow. He moved it to the trash. And that, more than anything, was the beginning of the end. Because now the war wasn't quiet. It was paper and positioning. It was strategy and silence. It was bedtime stories read with clenched jaws and goodnight kisses forgotten altogether. And the boy, caught in the middle, began to understand more than either of them wanted him to. He stopped smiling as often. Stopped asking questions. Stopped drawing. The man found a crumpled piece of paper under the couch one night. A sketch of 3 stick figures. One crossed out. His. One evening, after dinner, the man asked the boy to sit with him on the back porch. They watched the streetlights flicker on, one by one. Fireflies danced in the distance. A summer storm threatened the horizon. "Do you know how sometimes," he began, "people care about each other but still can't live together?" The boy nodded. "Like in movies. Or when animals fight but still play later." He smiled, despite himself. "Sort of." The boy leaned against him. "You don't have to be my dad. I just want you to be here." And that, more than anything, was what he had feared most. Because he couldn't. Not anymore. He left on a Thursday. No announcement. No slammed doors. Just a quiet morning with overcast skies, a cup of black coffee untouched on the counter, and a bag packed 2 nights earlier finally lifted from the closet floor. He didn't write a letter. He didn't take the child to the park for one last memory. He didn't even wait for her to come downstairs. He just stood there for a long moment in the kitchen doorway, listening to the sound of their life humming upstairs. Footsteps, the creak of her drawer, the boy's small voice humming to himself as he brushed his teeth, and knew he would not hear them like that again. Then he walked out the front door, turned the key in the lock for the last time, and left. He moved in with his brother across town. The first night, he didn't sleep. The second, he drank too much whiskey. The third, he sat on the porch and cried. Not loudly, not messily, but in the quiet, splintered way that only men who have held too much for too long can cry. He didn't answer her calls. Not the first, not the 12th, not the 34th. The voicemails grew more desperate, then angrier, then cold. "You're a coward," she hissed in one. "You abandoned him." He replayed that one twice. Not because he disagreed, but because he needed to feel something. Anything. A week later the letter came. Official, formal, postmarked and folded with precision. Notice of petition for full parental rights revocation and divorce filing. Attached, a statement confirming he had never adopted the child, had never been listed on the birth certificate, had no legal ties, financial or otherwise, beyond the 2 months of rent he had offered on departure. His lawyer, calm, measured, detached, confirmed it. "You're free. Clean. No support obligations. No alimony. Nothing." Freedom had never sounded so bitter. The boy's last drawing came by mail. A card. Handwritten, misspelled. Clearly dictated, not coached. "Dear Uncle, Mom says you're not coming back. That you don't want to be my dad. I think maybe I made you sad. I'm sorry. I miss video games. I miss your laugh. I miss your quiet. I don't understand. But maybe you don't either. I still think you're my almost dad. Love, L." He stared at it for hours. Not reading, just looking. As if the paper might breathe if he waited long enough. He didn't write back. He didn't know how. Months passed. Autumn came. Then winter. Therapy helped. Some. But not with the guilt. Not with the ache of what-ifs that lingered behind every shadow of decision. He ran into an old friend at a bookstore one day. "How's the little guy?" The friend asked, smiling, unaware. He paused. Swallowed. "He's doing fine," he said. And in that moment he wasn't sure if it was the truth, or a prayer. Years later he would remember the mornings. The small ones. The boy curled on the couch in mismatched socks, telling him facts about stars. The way he'd fall asleep during movies and drool on his arm. The way he'd look up when he did something good, eyes searching for approval like sunlight through clouds. He would remember those things. And they would hurt. But he would not regret leaving. Because staying would have meant lying. And if there's anything worse than leaving a child who called you uncle, it's becoming a father through resentment. The woman remarried, eventually. He heard through mutual acquaintances that the new man was kind. That he called the boy buddy. That the boy started calling him dad by his own choice. That knowledge didn't bring peace. But it didn't bring pain either. Just silence. And sometimes that's enough. One day he found the old Father's Day card in a book he hadn't opened in years. "Thank you for always being there, Dad," it read. And for a time he was. Not every man who stays is good. Not every man who leaves is bad. Some are just trying to survive the fire without burning down the child in the middle of it. He never wanted to be a father. But for a while he was something close. And maybe that was enough. Or maybe it wasn't. But it was real. And in a world full of roles and papers and titles, maybe that was the only thing that mattered. Maybe the hardest part of love isn't forgiveness. It's accepting that some cracks can't be mended. That some people enter our lives not to stay, but to test the boundaries between compassion and responsibility. The man in this story wasn't perfect. He stayed, he tried. He kept his word. But love, when mixed with resentment and silence, becomes a dangerous place to raise a child. If you've ever found yourself in a relationship where your role felt unclear, if you've ever tried to be what someone else needed, while quietly losing yourself, you might understand this. Sometimes walking away isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the last honest thing you have left. So what do you think? Should he have stayed, stepped into a role he never wanted? Or was leaving the only way to protect them both from more pain? If this story reminds you of someone, a friend, a father, a child caught in the middle, share this video with them. You never know what silent burden your voice might lift. And if you've ever been the one in between, not the villain, not the victim, leave a comment. You're not alone. And you don't have to carry the silence forever. Subscribe to the channel if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard. And thank you, truly, for watching all the way through. Not everyone makes it to the end of a story that hurts without hating.